The lower decks of Drakmer Station hummed with the steady rhythm of recycled air and distant machinery. In a cramped repair shop wedged between a noodle vendor and a broken atmosphere processor, Kong Taemin wiped grease from his hands and studied the plasma welder with careful attention. He had learned to make miracles from scraps over the years, and today was no different. Taemin was 35 years old by Earth's counting, though time meant little out here where 3 suns marked the days. His black hair was always dusted with metal filings, his work jumpsuit patched in dozens of places. Among the station's lower levels, everyone knew his reputation. If Taemin could not fix something, it simply could not be fixed. The station's alert system suddenly screamed to life. Red lights flooded the corridor outside his small shop. Taemin looked up from his work, his eyebrows pulling together in concern. Lockdown protocol initiated. A mechanical voice announced throughout the station. All civilians must remain in current locations. Through his grimy window, Taemin watched security drones swarm past like angry insects. Something big was happening. Something that made the VHR Empire very nervous. The VHIR ruled the sector space with absolute power wrapped in ancient ceremony. Taemin had fixed enough of their ships to know they viewed humans as amusing novelties. They thought humans were clever with tools, perhaps, but barely more than children compared to civilization that had built gates between stars before Earth had even discovered fire. A massive explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered and went dark for 3 seconds before emergency power kicked in. Taemin's tools rattled on their magnetic strips on the wall. Something was very wrong. Then came the crash. Metal shrieked as something large smashed into the corridor 3 sections down from his shop. Emergency alarms wailed louder. Taemin grabbed his portable scanner and medical kit. Old military habits never truly died. He moved carefully toward the terrible sound. The prisoner transport had punched through 2 thick metal walls before coming to rest in what used to be a cargo storage bay. Black smoke curled up from its cracked hull like reaching fingers. Bodies in VHR guard uniforms lay scattered across the floor like broken toys. Their special crystalline armor was shattered into countless pieces. And there, sitting in the center of all the destruction, was a woman. Princess Yuna of the VHR Empire was smaller than Taemin had expected. Her skin held a faint blue-silver glow that all VHR possessed. Her eyes were completely black with no pupils at all, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made him check his footing. She was clearly injured. One of her shoulders sat at a wrong angle. But that was not what caught and held his complete attention. It was the chains. They wrapped around her small wrists, her ankles, and even her throat like living serpents. The metal was so dark it seemed to drink all light rather than reflect it. Even in the dim red emergency lighting, the chains appeared to shimmer with barely contained energy. They looked both beautiful and terrible at the same time. Human. Her voice was like crystal bells, each word formed with perfect precision. You will help me, or you will die when they arrive to find me. Taemin could already hear the security forces gathering and moving closer. He calculated quickly in his head. He had perhaps 3 minutes before they reached this location. His old military training told him to walk away immediately. His curiosity, the thing that had made him both a good soldier and an even better mechanic, told him something completely different. Can you walk? He asked simply. No. Her face remained perfectly still, showing no emotion, but he caught the slight tremor in her hands. The chain suppressed all biological function beyond the most basic survival needs. I cannot heal myself. I cannot use any of my natural abilities. I cannot even stand up without help from another. Taemin moved closer, pulling out his scanner. The chains registered on his sensors as something his entire database could not identify. The readings showed matter that seemed to exist in multiple states at the same time. This was technology so incredibly advanced it touched the borders of the impossible. What are they? Taemin asked quietly. Null chains. They were forged 10,000 years ago from the cores of collapsed stars. No power in this entire galaxy has ever managed to break them. Her pure black eyes tracked every small movement he made. But I will make you wealthy beyond your wildest imagination if you will try. The security forces were now just 1 section away. Their heavy boots echoed through the damaged corridors. Tamine made a decision that would have completely horrified his younger, much more cautious self. "Come on, Your Highness. My shop has special shielding that the station authorities do not know anything about." He helped her stand slowly, feeling the unnatural weight of the chains pressing down. They were heavy in a way that seemed to defy all normal physics, as if they carried their own gravity within them. Yuna leaned against him heavily, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Together they stumbled and limped back toward a small repair shop. Just before he sealed the heavy blast door behind them, Tamine looked back one last time at the smoking wreckage. He wondered seriously if he had just made the best decision of his entire life, or the absolute worst. Tamine worked through the entire night, while security forces searched the station level by level. His shielded shop bought them precious time, but he knew it would not last forever. Outside, he could hear boots marching past, doors being forced open, and angry voices demanding answers. He treated the impossible chains like any other puzzle that crossed his workbench. His scanner revealed molecular structures that should not exist in normal reality. Energy signatures defied every law of physics he had learned. But underneath all that impossible complexity, his experienced eyes found something wonderfully familiar: stress points. "Every material has a breaking point," he muttered to himself, adjusting his scanning equipment for the 5th time. "The only question is finding exactly where it hides." Yuna watched him from where she sat on his workbench. Her completely black eyes tracked every movement he made with careful attention. "You speak as if these are ordinary restraints used for common prisoners. They are not ordinary at all. I can see that clearly." Tamine pulled up a thermal imaging display on his handheld screen. "But they're still bound by some kind of physical laws, even if I do not fully understand what those laws are yet." He pointed at the screen with one grease-stained finger. "Look here. Do you see these? Microscopic variations in temperature across the surface. The chains are self-regulating their own energy, which means they are constantly working to maintain perfect equilibrium. And this matters because..." Yuna asked, genuine curiosity coloring her crystalline voice. "Because anything that works hard to maintain balance can be pushed off that balance with the right force applied correctly." He began setting up a framework of hydraulic arms around her chained wrists. "Your people tried to break these chains with the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Energy weapons that could cut through starship hulls. Matter disruptors that could unmake solid objects. Quantum scissors that could cut the very fabric of reality itself. All things that chains were specifically designed and built to resist perfectly." "Yes, exactly. So what makes you think you can succeed?" "Because I'm going to use leverage. Simple heat cycling. Mechanical stress applied at very specific angles and calculated points." Tamine connected a series of basic heating elements to a power source. "Tell me something, Your Highness. When was the last time someone actually hit these legendary chains with an ordinary hammer?" Despite her desperate situation and the pain in her injured shoulder, Yuna's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Never in recorded history." "Exactly my point." Tamine grinned back at her. For the next 18 hours, Tamine worked without stopping once. His fingers moved with the practiced confidence of someone who had spent decades solving impossible problems. He heated specific sections of the dark chains with simple thermal torches, the kind any basic mechanic might own. Then he flash-cooled those same heated sections with liquid nitrogen that he normally used for freezing stuck bolts. He applied steady pressure with hydraulic jacks at angles he had calculated carefully to create maximum stress at the weakest points. He used diamond carbide drill bits, materials made on Earth that the ancient chainmakers could never have encountered or planned for 10,000 years ago. Security forces reached his section of the lower decks. Heavy fists pounded on his reinforced door like thunder. "Kong, Tamine, open this door immediately. This is your final warning." "Almost there," Tamine whispered, sweat dripping steadily from his forehead despite the cool air. The chains showed microscopic fractures now, hairline cracks spreading across their supposedly perfect and eternal surface. "Just one more adjustment, and we will know if this works." He activated the hydraulic system fully. Pressure built slowly and steadily, climbing higher and higher. The ancient chains began to vibrate strangely. The mysterious symbols crawling across their surface started flickering like dying lights. Yuna held her breath. Outside, the guards were bringing cutting equipment to breach the door. Then, with a sound exactly like a massive sheet of crystal breaking into 1,000 pieces, the null chain shattered completely. The explosion of suddenly released energy threw Tamien backward across his small shop. He crashed hard into a tool cabinet. Yuna gasped sharply as incredible power flooded back into her body like a dam breaking. Biokinetic abilities that had been locked away for months surged to full life again. Her skin glowed brilliant silver blue, bright enough to hurt the eyes. Her dislocated shoulder snapped back into its proper place with a wet, organic crack that made Tamien wince. Outside the shop, the security forces stumbled backward from the door. Their sensors were screaming warnings about massive energy readings. Alarms throughout the entire section began wailing. 10,000 years, Yuna breathed in pure amazement, staring down at her freed wrists. The skin was raw and damaged where the chains had rested, but it was healing rapidly now. 10,000 years of perfect imprisonment, broken by a human, with basic hand tools. Tamien picked himself up slowly from the floor, checking for broken bones and finding only deep bruises. Despite the pain shooting through his body, he was grinning widely. Never, ever underestimate the pure power of basic physics applied correctly. The shop door exploded violently inward. 6 VKR hunters in full combat armor poured through the smoking opening, weapons raised and ready. Their leader, a heavily scarred warrior, pointed his plasma rifle directly at Tamien's chest. The prisoner will return to custody immediately. The human will be executed for treason against eternal empire. VKR hunters poured through the smoking breach in the door. There were 6 of them, all clad in combat armor that shimmered constantly with protective energy fields. Their leader, a heavily scarred warrior named Rax, leveled a plasma rifle directly at Tamien's head. The prisoner will return to custody immediately. The human will be executed for treason against the Empire. Yuna stood slowly, her newly freed power crackling around her body like visible lightning. But she was still weak from the long months of captivity. Her abilities had only partially recovered their full strength. She managed to throw 2 hunters backward with a powerful biokinetic blast, but the effort made her stumble dangerously. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. Tamien had already moved into action. He hit the emergency release button on his shop's compressed air system. Jets of high-pressure gas exploded violently from hidden vents throughout the room, filling every space with thick, blinding vapor. In the sudden chaos, he grabbed Yuna's arm firmly. Maintenance tunnels. Right now. They ran together through narrow passages that only station engineers and maintenance workers knew existed. Behind them, the hunters' heavy armored footsteps echoed off the metal walls. Rax's angry voice boomed through the dark corridors like thunder. There is nowhere to run, foolish humans. I am not human, Yuna gasped between breaths as they ran. Close enough for now, Tamien replied quickly, pulling her around a sharp corner. His mind raced rapidly through the complete layout of the station that he had memorized over years of work. They desperately needed a ship, but all the main docking bays would be locked down tight. Unless he could think of something creative. Can you manipulate organic matter? Living things, he asked suddenly. Yes, of course. Why do you ask? The station master keeps exotic fish from Beta 7 in his private quarters. Expensive living creatures. Their tank connects directly to the main water recycling system. He pulled out his multi-tool while running. If you can accelerate their growth rapidly and make them very aggressive and hungry, Yuna's black eyes widened with sudden understanding. A distraction that will cause chaos. They reached a service junction filled with pipes and control panels. Tamien quickly hacked into the environmental controls while Yuna closed her eyes in concentration. She extended her biokinetic power carefully through the entire water system like invisible fingers. Somewhere far above them on the upper luxury decks, the station master's prize aquarium began to bubble and boil with sudden, violent life. 5 minutes later, terrified screams echoed to the upper decks as meter-long predatory fish with razor teeth exploded from water faucets, toilets, and decorative fountains. Wealthy residents ran in panic. That is absolutely horrifying, Tamine said, listening to the chaos. That is survival. Una corrected him simply. They reached Docking Bay 7, where a small courier ship sat seemingly abandoned. Its owner had clearly fled during the spreading chaos. Tamine dropped to his knees beside the access panel and began bypassing the electronic locks with practiced speed. Behind them, Una held off 2 hunters who had somehow tracked them to the confusion. Her powers were growing noticeably stronger with every passing minute. She sent one hunter crashing into a wall with such force his armor cracked. The second one she simply lifted off the ground, holding him suspended in midair, while his legs kicked uselessly. The courier ship's engines roared suddenly to life with a beautiful sound. "Get in!" Tamine shouted. They launched just as Rax and the rest of his team reached the docking bay entrance. Bright plasma fire scorched their ship's hull, leaving black marks across the metal. Tamine pushed the engines to maximum power, weaving between other docked ships as they escaped. As Drakmer Station shrank to a tiny point behind them in the black vastness of space, Una collapsed heavily into the co-pilot's seat. She was completely exhausted. Sweat covered her glowing skin. "Where are we going now?" she asked tiredly. "You tell me. You are the princess with the plan." "The Forgotten Stars Nebula. My loyal followers are hiding their fleet there, waiting for any sign of hope." She looked at him with genuine curiosity in her strange eyes. "You're staying with me? You could return to your quiet life." Tamine checked the navigation systems, plotting a course through several systems to avoid detection. "Your people put a bounty on my head the exact moment I freed you from those chains. Half the criminals in this sector will be hunting me. Besides, I have always wanted to see a real nebula up close. I heard they are beautiful." "You are very strange," calmed Tamine. "I get told that quite often, Your Highness." Behind them, the VHR Empire was mobilizing its entire fleet. Emergency broadcasts went out across dozens of systems. Wanted posters with both their faces appeared on every station and colony. The bounty was enormous. Every hunter, mercenary, and desperate criminal in the sector would be searching for them. But inside the small courier ship, racing toward the distant nebula, Tamine was already planning their next moves. And Una was beginning to understand why humans, despite being so young and primitive by galactic standards, were becoming something the ancient empires had to take seriously. They did not accept that anything was truly impossible. 3 days in a cramped courier ship revealed much about each other that neither had expected. Una learned that humans apparently survived on pure stubbornness and truly terrible coffee. Tamine learned that VHR princesses actually snored when they slept. Softly, but definitely. "Your species has only been in space for 80 years, Una said during one conversation. She was sipping the coffee Tamine had made and trying very hard not to grimace at the bitter taste. "My people built massive empires spanning entire galaxies before your world had even developed written language. And in all those millions of years, you forgot how to think small." Tamine was elbow deep inside the ship's engine compartment, making constant repairs to keep them flying. "You've got so incredibly advanced that simple solutions became completely invisible to you. Is that why humans are becoming so effective despite being so young? Because you are still learning everything. We are still questioning everything, still trying things just to see what happens." He emerged from the engine compartment, his face smudged with dark grease. "Your uncle's new regime. Why did they lock you specifically in null chains instead of just executing you?" Una's expression darkened like storm clouds. "Because I oppose his vision for our people's future. He believed the empire should expand only through military force, consuming lesser civilizations and taking everything they have. I believe real strength comes from cooperation, from learning from others who see the universe differently." She paused, her black eyes distant with memory. "He called me weak. He said I was soft and would destroy everything our ancestors built. You survived months in those chains. That does not sound weak to me at all." Their quiet conversation was suddenly interrupted by loud proximity alarms. 3 bounty hunter ships had found them, their weapon systems already hot and ready to fire. The small courier ship was not built for any kind of combat. Tamine immediately pushed the engines as hard as they could go, diving desperately into a nearby asteroid field. Sharp rocks the size of buildings floated all around them. Una used her biokinetic powers to detect enemy positions by sensing the life signs of the crews aboard their pursuing ships. "Left! 2 degrees!" she called out sharply. Tamine rolled the ship hard. Bright plasma fire missed them by only a few meters, the heat making their hull groan. They could not outrun the hunters forever. The courier was simply too slow. The ship took a direct hit, and critical systems began failing all around them. Warning lights flashed red everywhere. They were drifting helplessly, completely dead in the vast darkness of space. "I can fix it," Tamine said, already moving toward the equipment lockers. "But I need to go outside. The hull breach needs to be sealed from the exterior, or we will lose all our air. You will die out there. There is no possible way to survive in." "Yes, there is." He looked directly at her. "Your powers. Can you keep me alive in hard vacuum?" Una stared at him in complete shock. "For how long?" 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if I work very fast." It was absolutely insane. But she had already learned that insane was Tamine's particular specialty. "I will try my best." He suited up in an emergency spacesuit and cycled through the airlock. The moment he stepped into the complete emptiness of space, Una's power enveloped him like an invisible blanket. Biokinetic energy slowed his cellular processes dramatically, recycled his oxygen at the molecular level, kept his blood from boiling in the vacuum. It hurt terribly. Everything hurt. His body screamed that this was wrong. But Tamine worked with steady hands, wielding patches and sealant, while the universe itself tried to kill him. His fingers grew numb inside the gloves. Frost formed on his faceplate. 14 minutes later, he stumbled back inside to the airlock, frost coating his entire suit. Una caught him as he collapsed to the floor. Her power flooded through his damaged body, repairing tissue, warming frozen blood, bringing him back for the edge of death. "You are completely insane," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Yeah," he managed to say through chattering teeth. "But the ship works now." They escaped while the bounty hunters were still searching the massive asteroid field for their bodies. Later that evening, as Tamine slowly recovered wrapped in thermal blankets, and Una guided them toward the distant nebula, something unspoken passed between them, more than respect, deeper than simple trust. Something neither was quite ready to name or examine closely. "Thank you," Una said very quietly into the dim light of the ship, "for everything you have done. Thank me when we are not constantly running for our lives anymore." Tamine replied, but he smiled warmly when he said it. Outside the ship's small windows, space stretched forever in all directions. Somewhere behind them, the Empire was hunting. Somewhere ahead, loyal VKR waited for their princess to return. And inside the tiny courier ship, 2 very different people from 2 very different worlds learned that sometimes the strongest bonds form in the strangest circumstances. The nebula grew larger in their view screen with each passing hour. Beautiful colors swirled in clouds of stellar gas. They were getting close now, but neither of them knew that the worst danger still waited ahead. The forgotten stars' nebula blazed before them like a painting made of light. Clouds of stellar gas swirled in impossible colors that human eyes were never meant to see. And hidden within those beautiful clouds, the Loyalist fleet waited. 30 warships holding desperately against an entire empire. But they were too late. The regime's massive armada had already found them. 200 vessels surrounded the nebula like a closing fist. In the center floated the flagship, enormous and terrible. Tamine's sensors detected something aboard that made his blood run cold. A weapon. A massive null-chain field generator that would suppress every single Loyalist power simultaneously. "It is over," Una whispered, all hope draining from her voice. "We cannot possibly fight that." Tamine studied the sensor readings carefully, his mind racing through possibilities. The weapon used the same principle as her chains, just scaled up to an enormous size, which meant it had to have similar weaknesses. It has the same structural flaws. "Tamine, no. That thing is the size of a building. You cannot just... I am not going to break it directly. I am going to overload it from within." His fingers flew rapidly across the control console. If I can get aboard the flagship and reverse the polarity, feed the weapon its own energy signature reflected back at a specific frequency, that would create a cascade failure that would completely destroy the entire ship and everyone aboard. Exactly. He looked at her seriously. Can you get me aboard without being detected? Yuna broadcast immediately to the Loyalist fleet on an encrypted channel. Princess Yuna of the VKR, alive and free. The chains are broken. Engage the enemy now. Give us an opening to reach the flagship. The fleet surged forward like wolves finally released. In the massive chaos of battle, explosions lighting space like fireworks, one small courier ship went completely unnoticed. It slipped quietly through the defensive perimeter toward the flagship. They boarded through an unguarded maintenance bay. Yuna's powers had fully returned to their maximum strength now. She moved through the corridors like living lightning, incapacitating guards before they could even raise their weapons or sound alarms. Taemin followed close behind with his toolkit, heading directly for the weapon's core. They reached it after 10 tense minutes. A massive chamber with a null chain generator pulsed with stolen star matter, beautiful and deadly. Taemin set to work immediately, rewiring circuits, recalibrating systems. His hand steady despite the battle raging outside the hull. Stop right there. Yuna's uncle, Regent Deho, stood at the chamber's entrance. He was tall and imposing, his armor gilded with symbols of absolute authority. Niece, I gave you a chance to join me and rule together. You gave me chains, Yuna replied, stepping between Taemin and her uncle. You gave our entire people tyranny dressed as strength. I gave them real strength. Unity through force. The old ways were dying, cooperation with lesser species, wasting time with diplomacy with primitives. His eyes fixed on Taemin with pure hatred. This human proves my point perfectly. See how quickly he works to destroy us. He is saving you, Yuna said softly but firmly, from becoming the very thing you claim to fight against. You built chains for our entire empire, uncle, chains of fear and obedience. He showed me that chains are only unbreakable if you believe they are. Deho raised his weapon. Yuna's power flared brightly around her. Behind them, Taemin completed the final connection with a soft click. Done. Everyone get clear now. The generator began to whine, a sound that quickly grew louder and higher. Its frequency spiraled upward into ranges that made teeth ache. Deho's expression shifted rapidly from absolute confidence to pure horror as he realized exactly what was happening. They ran. Yuna grabbed Taemin's arm, and they sprinted back to the corridors. The flagship shuddered violently beneath their feet as the weapon began devouring itself. The null chain field collapsed inward like a dying star. They reached their ship and launched just as the flagship exploded. The explosion lit the entire nebula like a newborn sun. The regime's fleet, suddenly leaderless and seeing their ultimate superweapon destroyed, surrendered within minutes. 2 weeks later, Taemin stood in his workshop, not the cramped station shop, but a new one on the VKR homeworld. Yuna had reclaimed her throne and immediately begun reforms. Councils instead of absolute rule, alliances instead of conquest, learning instead of domination. She visited in between long state meetings. The Empire wants to make you a noble, give you vast estates, titles, servants. I appreciate the thought, but no thanks. Taemin gestured to his workspace filled with tools and projects. This is what I do. Fix things. Solve problems that others think are impossible. Then take this. She placed something in his hand, a piece of the broken null chains, carefully reforged into a beautiful multi-tool. Inscribed on it in both VKR and Korean script were words, for the one who taught an empire that nothing is unbreakable if you are willing to see it differently. I have one favor to ask, Yuna added quietly. My empire needs someone who questions everything, who sees solutions others miss completely. Stay here. Help us rebuild. Be my advisor. Taemin considered carefully. Will there be more impossible problems? Constantly. Then I am in. He smiled, but I am keeping my shop and my coffee machine. Deal. As Yuna left to address her council, Taemin added the tool to the collection and looked out at the alien skyline. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were more problems that needed solving, more chains that needed breaking. And for the first time in years, he felt exactly where he belonged. The forgotten stars' nebula blazed before them like a painting made of light. Clouds of stellar gas swirled in impossible colors that human eyes were never meant to see. And hidden within those beautiful clouds, the Loyalist fleet waited, 30 warships holding desperately against an entire empire. But they were too late. The regime's massive armada had already found them. 200 vessels surrounded the nebula like a closing fist. In the center floated the flagship, enormous and terrible. Tamin's sensors detected something aboard that made his blood run cold. A weapon, a massive null-chain field generator that would suppress every single Loyalist power simultaneously. "It is over," Una whispered, all hope draining from her voice. "We cannot possibly fight that." Tamin studied the sensor readings carefully, his mind racing through possibilities. The weapon used the same principle as her chains, just scaled up to an enormous size, which meant it had to have similar weaknesses. It has the same structural flaws. Tamin, no, that thing is the size of a building. You cannot just... I am not going to break it directly. I am going to overload it from within. His fingers flew rapidly across the control console. If I can get aboard the flagship and reverse the polarity, feed the weapon its own energy signature reflected back at a specific frequency, that would create a cascade failure that would completely destroy the entire ship and everyone aboard. Exactly. He looked at her seriously. Can you get me aboard without being detected?